I wanted to backtrack, go back to the presentation if possible. Could we have the slide with the two speakers? I wanted to introduce them. I'm very happy to introduce Alexandre Vigier, the CEO of Omnitech Security, a security specialist as well as C, and Sophie Marks, we saw you yesterday. You're still Director of Services and Consulting at WTW, and you're an aviation insurance specialist. We've understood quite a few things from the Pandrone project already, Alexandre. But what more can we say so that we really understand where we are and what that's going to change? Well, first, something that is good is that we are finally able to hunt as a pack. I started my career in the US and we were not able to hunt as a pack. You saw that we've got 17 partners tackling a problem which is that of perimeter security on airports. That's a real issue. Why? Because at CDG, you've got 125 kilometers of fencing at Bordeaux. That's about 37 kilometers with areas that you can't go and monitor. So that's a true risk for you as insurers. That's a true risk because that's going to block traffic, because we might have incidents happening on the tarmac with planes that are deteriorated, and we need to find solutions because the solutions, as you saw on the video, are exclusively human-based, only with just a few cameras here and there. But if you look at the volume, indeed, that is a real issue. For that, we need to go for startups. That's good because we had startups earlier. We need to look for startups. We need to look for research laboratories. We need to look for industrial companies that already have building blocks with a good TRL. TRL, you were talking about that earlier when you've got innovation. An idea is TRL 0. When it's in production, it's TRL 10. These are building blocks that are put in place and that can be developed and accelerated. So we're starting with an expression of requirements. That's what we need. That's what we did. Then we developed building blocks, and in these building blocks, in development, we talked about cybersecurity earlier. It needs to be secure by design. When we mean secure by design, that needs to be deeply secure by design. You've probably heard of quantum that will reach the market, and now our systems need to be resilient to post-quantum, PQC, post-quantum computing. And post-quantum needs to be already built into the systems developed now. The ANSSI, the Information System Security Agency in France, imposes that from 2030, all government systems will have to be quantum resistant. We are a government system because we're protecting airports. So we need to align these building blocks with the various partners' needs. So that's happening in 4 phases. Expressing requirements, we did that. Developing building blocks, we are completing it. And we are integrating solutions that will communicate with one another on secure buses so that we can finally have a demonstrator. The goal is not necessarily to have a final system that can be distributed everywhere, because indeed the costs will be relatively high. The goal is above all to be able to develop these building blocks and build them into all these technologies. We won't have a lot of time, but I think that we'll have a conclusion about what can be done beyond aviation. We saw that with pilots, and thank you for what you said. I'm very sensitive to that because my son is on a CMA CGM boat. So yes, indeed, we need to protect boats as well, and we can protect them when they're going through areas that are risky in terms of piracy and so on. And there we can get all these building blocks and make them available. Sophie, concretely, what are you expecting from such a project? I think that expectations can boil down to more security. That's something that is music to the ears of Perimat participants, and that caught my attention, and that's why I thought that this project really belonged in this conference. Securing things can be about the security of air transport. We can prevent operational risk and natural risk, but that's more about safety. And security, as Alexandre was talking about, that's preventing illicit actions, and Pandrone is right on the money with that. On airports, there's a lot of security on the terminal side, because in a way we are all victims of the screening stations as passengers. There's also 100% inspection of hold luggage, of cargo, access control is in place. It's all very secure. We saw that in the video with the testimonials from everybody. Now we're tackling the environmental part, the perimeter of the airport grounds, because of course we can't build walls that are impossible to scale around the runways. We have fencing, and we need to secure those fences to have a dynamic security system for air transport. Well, is that going to change anything for us, regular passengers, or for cargo transport? It's not going to change anything for passengers, but that will ensure more smoothness. For 25 years, almost 30 years, I've been working in security. We always made sure, I always said that security should not be a constraint, but a facilitator. So we are following this approach 100%. When the towers fell, I presented systems. I was already in a startup then, showing a system that could control access for airport staff and to screen and have data mining, as we called it back then. Now it's AI, to be able to say, well, it's weird, there are people in this area that shouldn't be when they're not on duty, for instance. So airports told me, no, we're just operators, we don't do security. And on the 12th of September, I was in the office of the Director General for Civil Aviation telling them, you should deploy systems. And now we've got startups with systems where AI is directly placed in the vector, and then it is directly embedded in the bus that will transport the data, and also directly in the hypervisor that will help analyze the data and provide an answer, as we said earlier. We need to provide solutions to support decision-making by operators, pilots, airline, plane pilots, or ship pilots, to provide them with the right information, and AI at every level will help do that. It's not ChatGPT or Mistral. These are AI agents that will be directly embedded in the vectors, in the detectors. Now with the startups, now we can send drones, a drone swarm, to detect holes in fences. We can send drone swarms to neutralize a person. We can send drone swarms to neutralize a hijacker on a boat. We are able to do that. Well, we have issues with legislation. That's the only problem now. Startups are able to do that. We know how to do that. We can make it safe with drones that are no longer remotely operated. They are fully autonomous on land, sea, or in the air. Sophie, in addition to what that is going to change for our daily life, well, I wouldn't quite agree with Alexandre regarding passengers, because in fact prevention is about taking care of people even though they are not aware. So eventually we'll also protect passengers, although they don't realize it. But we'll also protect insurers, because let's talk about you. Insurers, and in particular aviation insurers, especially those present in the room, they provide insurance cover, in particular via war risk cover. So in insurance cover, war risk and other assimilated risk, terrorism, attacks, sabotage, vandalism, and so on, are excluded systematically, have always been since the dawn of times. They're excluded from cover, but since we need that, there will be specific policies for damage cover, or an extension, a rider for civil liability. And of course, these insurance covers will be protected via these security systems. Concretely, how much is that going to cost us, Alexandre, and when will that be operational? Well, it all depends is the very accurate answer. You shouldn't look at the investment cost, the capex. You need to look at the CEO of Motorola told me that when I was working in the US, you should look at the total cost of ownership and what that will help you reduce as an operator on an airport or something else. You can deploy systems, but the good thing is that they're fully modular. Based on the customer's needs, you can define that. Can that already be deployed on a small airport tomorrow? Some of the building blocks are already operational because as an industrial company, we can deploy them, and there are a number of building blocks, the TRL of which is increasing. They'll be available from October onwards because we'll have a giant demonstrator at the UAV show in Bordeaux, organized by Techno West in Bordeaux, where we'll demonstrate all these technologies on a unified basis. When will that be in Bordeaux? On the 1st and 2nd of October. Sophie, drawing direct consequences. Will premiums go down? Well, of course, I would like to answer yes, of course, Cécile. And that would be the end of it, and that would be great. But the answer is not always as simple as the question might lead you to think. And so, very quickly, I would like to backtrack 25 years ago, because 25 years ago, at the same date, we were before 9/11, 2001, that Alexandre was talking about, and we were in a situation where insurers were not really sensitive to war risk or terrorism risk, strangely enough. Although we had tragic similar events, but without being cynical, we could imagine the potential maximum loss. That's the cost of an aircraft with the times the number of lives lost. But 9/11 changed things because aircraft were no longer a potential terrorism target, but also a vector to reach other targets. And so that then there's a boom in the potential maximum loss. And so after 9/11, insurers started thinking, and so what they did the next day almost is to terminate war risk covers for aircraft or hulls or for civil liability, because they thought they wouldn't be able to financially bear the cost of a second similar event that would be out of line with their economics. But so you needed to cover the aircraft, and the market responded. And so aircraft covers for war risk were reinstated, and civil liability ditto, but with two things. The premium, you might remember the $1.25 per passenger premium, and a limitation of cover to $50 million for everything that has to do with non-passenger third parties. And you can see that they wanted to protect themselves from the risk of aircraft being used as a vector to reach other targets. Governments had to take over because we needed to keep aircraft in the air and to allow aircraft operators be in line with the requirements of their lessors in terms of insurance. And then 25 years later, the market has recovered. Now the situation is that we've got war risk cover for aircraft. We've got civil liability cover with two aspects: primary cover covering up to 150, 250, 350 million for non-passenger third party and full limit for passengers, and a secondary market which is excess war risk that takes over between that sublimit and the main limit of the policy. So the market has organized in the best interest of everybody.
Vous avez évoqué le problème.
Alexandre, you tackled the issue of regulations very concretely. What would you be looking to change in this respect? Well, in the video, we can see my friend from safety at Basel Mulhouse, and he's saying that there are many of us and we can shift the lines. Well, around an airport, for example, you cannot fly a drone. It's really complicated. So we've embarked the DGSC, CCRN. Well, there are a few of them in the room, so be careful here. Yes, and the army as well, to shift these lines, because we're going to need this. We're going to need UAVs, whether they work on the road or by sea. And obviously, if you fly a group of drones close to tracks, flying tracks, that's really complicated. For the moment, you cannot do that. It's not authorized. There's a new regulation on the way, so good luck to insurers. It's called loot space. Basically, areas where commercial drones can be flown. And these aircrafts will be flying through these areas. So there will be people managing these use spaces. So there's a first startup in the consortium that's use space certified. So that will be a real challenge because there will be aircrafts and drones flying in these areas. So with this new regulation, we're hoping to somewhat shift the lines in order to make progress and make sure that we have smart drones that can be flown there. But how much does it cost is the question. Well, actually, I did ask you the question and you answered it depends. So I thought that it just depended and that was that. Well, actually, I'm not going to give an exact figure, but I'll just say it's quite cheap compared with the risk it entails. Okay, so a word to conclude, please, now. Well, importantly, airports are but an example of these systems, which are sovereign systems, and I really want to insist on that. That will be my key conclusion. You need sovereign systems. Your clients need sovereign systems. Israelis developed pagers that they gave to the Hezbollah and that they had explode when they wanted. They've been at it for 15 years. Today, the Swedish cannot fly their aircrafts if the Americans don't authorize them. So sovereignty, sovereignty, sovereignty. In the US, to create solutions, they're working on solutions that are different from ours. So let us develop our own solutions. Let us have our own labs, startups, and industries, and make sure that all of that ecosystem can work with one another. Thales, you know, they're great. Personally, I do not have the resources to hire Thales engineers, but there are great, solid companies that can develop these new systems, and we have reached that point. AI is directly embarked on all of these systems, and we need French and European AI for that purpose. What about you, Sophie? Were to conclude? Well, on airports, I think a key progress will be to work on securing airport zones. But make no mistake, we also need to assess responsibilities, and safety depends on many actors, starting with the state authorities. So you want to have everyone on board with all of these aspects. Thank you very much to the both of you. Now is the time for lunch. This time this will be a lunch cocktail reception, the large room downstairs and 2 rooms here on the floor 101. And also you'll be able to go to the large room downstairs. Now, some of you unfortunately left with their translation headsets yesterday. Please make sure that you give them back to us by this evening. Thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch.